The Iraqis came up and they said, when you came here, you told us that we could trust you. You told us you were an intelligence officer. You told us that you fought in the war, but you said that you would never lie to us, that we can trust you. They said, we can never trust you again. I said, what? What did I do? How did I lie to you? They said, you were part of of assassination effort against the president. I said, I was no such thing. And then they started to tell me what was going on. And I realized that my inspection team had been used by the United States as a front for assassinating Saddam Hussein. It wasn't the only time. In March 1998, they used my inspection team to try and start a war with Iraq, the inspection of the Ministry of Defense building. This was briefed at the White House, planned by the White House. I was picked to lead this mission because they believed that the Iraqis would never allow us in. What they don't realize is my job is never to start a war, at least not as a UN weapons inspector. My job was to do an inspection. And I got on the ground and I convinced the Iraqis at the highest levels, this one all the way up to the big man, that if they don't let us in, there's going to be a war. And if they let us in, they can trust me to do my job. If you have material related to my work, I will find it. They knew how good I was. But if you don't, we're not here to cause problems. We'll inspect. And if you tell me there's nothing in there and I confirm there's nothing there, we're out of here. They let us in and we stopped a war. That's one of the reasons why the United States government decided to start shutting me down after that inspection, because they said that Ritter's not playing ball the way we want him to play ball. Well, my job wasn't to do that. My job was to be a weapons inspector and be a weapons inspector with integrity. That doesn't mean I'm incapable of playing the wink, wink, nod, nod game. I just told you I had 2 classified commendations from the director of the CIA, but I'm a man of honor. When I shake your hand, when we have a contract, that's the contract that I will that I will die for. And when I joined the United Nations, I confronted the U.S. government and said, is there a hidden agenda? And they said, your job is to fulfill the mandate set forth by the Security Council under Resolution 687. That was my job, told to me by the U.S. government. And the CIA can't come in afterwards and renegotiate that because I don't work for the CIA. I never did work for the CIA.
Why didn't the Iraqis kill you on the spot? I mean, if they thought that you were a part of a plot to assassinate Saddam Hussein and they killed the others, why wouldn't they have killed you?
I'm an American citizen, but they tried several times to kill me. In the summer of 1997, again, I had a confrontation with Uday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's elder son. He was running around in his Porsche 928 outside of a facility we were inspecting, and the Iraqis were scared to death of him. I stood in front of his car to make him come to a stop, and then when his window came down, I shouted at him, told him in certain Marine Corps language with lots of colorful words to get the heck out of my area of operations. And he sped off and got drunk and ordered the Murafakin, his personal bodyguards, to assassinate me that night. And they sent a 2-man assassination team to the site, but they were drunk. And as they came out of their car, they pulled out their pistol and shot themselves in the leg. And so now they're screaming on the ground, bleeding. They get thrown in, they get driven off. The next day, a whole new security team comes in, and they're there to protect me from Uday. And I was actually, I had in my inspection paperwork, we had a signed warrant to inspect Uday's residence. So I said, screw it. Uday, want to play ball? Let's go. And I'm driving my team down there. My team's going, Scott, do you really want to do this? Is this the smartest thing in the world to do? And I'm like, Uday tried to kill me. I'm going to go after him. And as we're going, the Iraqis, one by one, are peeling off. And finally, the last general stops and he says, we know where you're going. We can't go with you. And if you go there, you will die. And he said, we don't want you to die. There's no reason to go there. There's nothing there. I promise you. Only death awaits you. And that I looked at my other inspectors, and that's when the light went off and said, this ain't worth dying for. And I turned around and I went back to the facility. But they tried to gun me down outside of the intelligence headquarters building on 2 separate occasions. As I arrived at a site, the Special Republican guards put loaded guns to my head, threatened to shoot me. I confronted one at outside of our airplane. They pulled out a pistol to threaten to shoot me, put it up against my head. I shouted at him, pull the trigger, do it. Don't threaten me, do it. He didn't do it. Why? Because you don't kill an American like that, because it'll be war. That's what they realized. And the other thing is, they knew I never lied to them. They knew I never. Why do you think I was allowed back into Iraq after I resigned to make a movie about the history of weapons inspections? Why would they let me do that? Why did they let me testify or go before the Iraqi parliament in September of 2002? The only non-Iraqi to speak before the Iraqi parliament ever at that time, to appeal to the Iraqi government to let weapons inspectors back in without preconditions as the only way to stop a war. They let me do that. Saddam Hussein agreed and allowed inspectors back in. Why would they do that? Because they knew I never lied to them. They knew I was a mean, tough son of a gun. They knew that I was a hard-nosed inspector, and they knew that I wouldn't compromise. But they knew that when I told them something, straight up told them something, that it was the truth. Nothing but the truth, so help me God.
So clearly, the government doesn't, or the military-industrial complex, whatever, or the deep state, or whatever you want to, however you want to call them, but they clearly don't care about the truth. They have an agenda. They set their minds on an agenda and only want information, or even will make up information in order to get that agenda implemented.
Look, I just told you the story how the director of the CIA, the director, James Woolsey, you're still alive, dude. I hope you're watching this. You're a lying sack of manure. I just exposed you on national TV. You're the one who said there's 12 to 20 and that number will never change no matter what I do. How'd you come up with that number, Jimmy? Why'd you come up with that number, Jimmy? You're an intelligence officer. You're supposed to be briefing the commander in chief about the truth, Jimmy. Oh, you're telling me that there's a political agenda, that the CIA does have politicized intelligence, and they do. The entire WMD fiasco was one concocted lie because they knew the truth. How did they know the truth? Because for 7 years, myself and other inspectors were in Iraq doing very, very dangerous work. I just told you how many times, bad things almost happened. There were even more than that. Very dangerous work under very difficult circumstances. And we found the truth. We found the truth. It wasn't just bumbling around doing it. In 1995, in November of 1995, based on Israeli intelligence, I went to Jordan, met with the king of Jordan and his senior intelligence officer about intelligence that a Palestinian middleman had brought in missile components from Russia and were getting ready to ship them on to Iraq. Mm-hmm. They were going the next morning. I had to convince the king to launch a raid that night. He did. They found the gyroscopes. That's how good we were. That's how good we were. We were really good at our job. And we could ascertain that between 95 and 97% of Iraq's totality of its weapons of mass destruction had been identified and destroyed by the end of our job. The unaccounted for stuff, like I told you, they blew it up forensically. Bones disappear. Bombs get scattered. You can't account for everything. But we were monitoring every industrial facility in Iraq. Every industrial facility in Iraq had a camera in it, had teams coming in, and we could show without any doubt that there was no reconstitution of their weapons of mass destruction programs. There was no way in hell that Iraq had a single weapon of mass destruction when George Bush ordered the American military to cross the border for the purpose of punishing Saddam Hussein for failing to disarm. We knew he disarmed. We knew it. I knew it. Joe Biden knew it. I briefed Joe Biden. He didn't want to hear it. He knew the truth, and yet he convened a Senate hearing in the summer of 2002 to provide political cover for this war. Joe Biden's a lying sack of manure. They all are. Not a single one of them knows how to tell the truth.
So if they have an agenda, and they clearly are willing to manipulate the truth, the information in order to implement their agenda, they have to get the American people or just the public, the Western people, to agree to this. They have to get the public to go along with it. Let's talk now about Operation Mass Appeal. Tell us what this is.
Well, to set the story up, as I told you, we were ready to close the books on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program in 1994, 1995. We knew that we had accounted for the vast majority of it, especially when the Iraqis came clean about their biological weapons program. That was the last thing. But we had this unaccounted for material still. And we had the problem of the concealment mechanism, the presidential guards, until the Iraqis told us the truth about that. I actually cracked that. Again, I don't want to bore you with the details, so some of the details are pretty cool. But by the summer of at the end of the summer of 1997, I was sitting down with the commander of the Special Republican Guard. Yep, come on, Mustafa. I was sitting down with his colonels, and I was interrogating them about what they did. The Iraqis finally admitted, because of the work that I and others did, that they had a concealment mechanism, that it had been involved in hiding weapons of mass destruction. They identified who they were, and then they showed us what they were doing today and that they had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction today. It's something that had they done a couple years ago, we wouldn't have all this problem. But, they finally told the truth. As I'm leaving that night, a U.S. weapons inspector named Diane Seaman came in, and she had just done a no-notice inspection of a biological facility, and she caught two guys going out the back door, special security officers. That's Saddam Hussein's personal security. And they had documents on there, and in the documents, the loose Arabic translation, they went down and they had botulinum toxin, they had some controlled things that were there, and when they were asked about it, they refused to answer. They refused to answer. Long story short, these were the guys who did the testing of Saddam Hussein's food and of his stool to make sure that he's not poisoned. And they were showing the different things they test for. There was nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. But we had a loose Arabic translation. She came to me and said, "What do you do? What do you want to do?" And I said, "Let's confront them." So we had a meeting that night. I said, "You guys have to confess what this is." Then and they wouldn't. They wouldn't talk about it because they're not allowed to talk about presidential security. They're just not allowed to. We wouldn't talk about our presidential security to foreigners. They can't talk about it. So I said, "Well, you want to do it the easy way? No, we're going to do it the hard way. I'm inspecting the special security headquarters tonight." And we took off down the road. And that's about the night that I almost died, because we got to one of those checkpoints that nobody goes across because the president's beyond there. And the gun came in and they were threatening to blow us all up and kill us. And that stopped that inspection. The Iraqis came in and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going here, blah, blah, blah." They had us. They had us this time, because this time the intelligence was bad. This was really about food inspection. There was nothing bad going on. This was a genuine misunderstanding. But because of the politics, it got blown out of proportion. We had an emergency meeting of the special commission. That's all the 100, the members that were appointed. The Security Council, the Russians were there. Lavrov was the ambassador at the time. He's there, the whole thing. And it's not looking good for us. They're starting to say that UNSCOM, especially Ritter, is a troublemaker. You're there just to make trouble. You never want this thing resolved, et cetera. So we have a huge PR problem. We are losing the PR battle around the world. Two things happened. First, the British came up to me and they said, I worked very closely with the MI6 station chief at the UN mission. Yes, they have a station chief at the UN mission. And we had been working together over a course of several years on intelligence issues. And he said, "Look, we have a program. We have an organization that does this kind of information operations. We're not asking you to lie." Because I said, "I don't lie. That's not going to do it." He said, "But in your files, do you have intelligence that is non-actionable? To be actionable, it has to be something of enough specificity that I can build an inspection team, a known location on the ground within a certain time frame, where I can accomplish certain tasks that fulfill an inspection objective that meets the mandate of the Security Council." I said, "Yeah, we got a whole bunch of that stuff, rumors, this, that, and the other thing." He said, "Could you give us like 5 of your best things that you can't inspect? Give it to us. And what we're going to do is we work it over, and then we get it published around the world in different newspapers in countries where we're trying to win over attention." I said, "I don't get to make that call." So I went to Richard Butler, the Australian ambassador in charge, and I said, "The British have approached me about this program, and they want to take some files and they want to turn them into news stories and then release them." And Butler went, "Yeah, we need to do that because we're losing the PR battle." And so I took the files, I gave it to the British. This was called Operation Mass Appeal. The code name given to this project of taking UN intelligence, turning it into news stories, planting it in the international media, was called Operation Mass Appeal. At the same time, the CIA approached us and said, "We want to do a documentary with CNN." This is pretty cool because the CIA is working with CNN. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. I just told you that the CIA is working with CNN to do a documentary that's designed to shape the opinion of the American people. So the CIA goes to Charles Dulfer, the deputy executive chairman, who comes to me and he says, "You're the intelligence dude. You're going to work with the CIA to release information to CNN so they can do this documentary. They're going to interview you guys. They're going to package it up, spying on Saddam," and they were going to put it out there. The Inspector Story, I think they called it. And they released it in March of 1998. The Iraqis hated it because they accused us of cooperating with the CIA. We did. But these are two giant propaganda things. The thing about Mass Appeal is that this program didn't end. I continued to work with them on Mass Appeal up until June of 1998. Later, when I went to England on the eve of the war, trying to talk to the British Parliament, um, you know, they wouldn't talk. They wouldn't admit, the Blair government wouldn't admit this. So I went public about mass appeal. And the curious thing is, first the Brits deny it. Doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. I had too much detail, though. And they finally had to admit that, yes, mass appeal existed. But they, in typical lying fashion, said it didn't begin when Ritter said it began in November of 1997. No, it was just a one-time meeting in June of 1998. And it was only about this specific issue, and nothing happened from it. It's not a big deal. Again, they lie. That's all intelligence services do, is lie. They don't know how to tell the truth.